Back in 2018, I was 19 and working part-time at a small burger place in a quiet little town called Greenville, Ohio. The place wasn't fancy, just a local spot my Uncle Joe ran with a few other family members. I just started college that fall, so my schedule was pretty full. To help me out, Uncle Joe gave me a simple job. I'd come in at night to clean up the kitchen and dining area after the place closed. No cooking or dealing with customers, just sweeping, wiping down tables, and mopping floors. It was easy money and I could listen to music while I worked. Most nights were super quiet. I'd show up around 10:30 p.m. and leave a little after midnight. But one week in December, something weird started happening. It was a cold Monday night, and the streets were empty, just like usual. About an hour into my shift, I glanced out the front window while wiping down the soda machine. That's when I saw it. A gray, older-looking car sitting alone in our small parking lot. It wasn't parked close to the entrance, more off to the side, like whoever was in it didn't want to be seen. The headlights were off and the windows were too dark to see through. At first, I didn't think much of it. Maybe someone stopped to check their phone or eat something in their car. It wasn't that unusual. After about 20 minutes, the car drove off. I didn't see anyone get out or even move inside. Just the engine starting and the car slowly pulling away. The next night, Tuesday, the same car showed up again. Same time, same spot. This time it felt different, like on purpose. It pulled in slowly, almost like it was watching the place. The headlights stayed on this time, pointing straight at the front windows. I walked up to the door and made sure it was locked, just in case. My hands felt cold, not just from the weather, but that nervous kind of cold where you feel it in your chest. I kept cleaning, but I couldn't stop glancing at the window. I didn't see anyone get out. The car just sat there, engine running, headlights lighting up the glass. After about 25 minutes, it left again. That night, when I walked out to my car to go home, I felt super nervous, even though the lot was empty. By then, I looked over my shoulder the whole way to my car. I even drove a different route home. Something about it just felt off. Wednesday night, I stayed home to study for a big exam. I kept thinking about that car though. I told my mom about it and she said it was probably nothing, but to be careful and to let Uncle Joe know. I said I would. On Thursday, I went back to work. All night I kept checking the front window, expecting to see those headlights again. But nothing. Not a single car pulled into the lot. I started to think maybe it was just a random thing, maybe I was overthinking it. I finished cleaning up around 1 a.m. and locked up the building. The moment I stepped outside, that weird feeling came rushing back, like someone was watching me. The parking lot looked empty, but something felt wrong. I stood still and looked around slowly. That's when I saw it. At the far end of the lot, in the corner where the street lamp didn't reach, a car was parked. Same gray color, same shape, same windows I couldn't see into. My heart started beating fast. I tried to act normal and walk toward my own car, which was parked closer to the building. As I got halfway across the lot, the gray car's headlights suddenly turned on, and it started driving toward me. Fast I ran. My boots slipped a little on the cold pavement, but I didn't stop. The gray car's tires screeched as it sped up, cutting across the lot like it was trying to block me. I reached my car just in time and fumbled with my keys. My hands were shaking so bad, I nearly dropped them. Right as I got the door open, I heard car doors slam. I looked up. 3 people in hoodies and dark masks were running straight at me. I jumped in, slammed the door shut, and hit the lock button as fast as I could. The men reached my car and started banging on the windows, pulling at the handles, yelling something I couldn't understand. I turned the key. Nothing. The engine didn't start. I tried again, and this time the car roared to life. I threw it into reverse and hit the gas, swerving away from them. One of them tried to chase. after me, but I was already pulling onto the street. I didn't go home right away. I drove straight to the nearest gas station, one that was open 24/7 and always had lights on. I called 911 from there. A police car showed up about 10 minutes later, and I explained everything. The worst part? Our restaurant didn't have outdoor security cameras. The police said they'd patrol the area for the next few nights, but without a license plate or a good description of the guys, there wasn't much they could do. I didn't work another night shift after that. Uncle Joe understood completely and changed the cleaning schedule so someone else could handle it earlier in the evening. I still worked there for a while, but I never saw that gray car again. To this day, I don't know who those people were or what they wanted. Maybe they were trying to rob me, maybe worse. But I was lucky. If I had dropped my keys or if my car hadn't started on that second try, who knows? I still think about that night sometimes, especially when I walk alone to my car in a dark parking lot, and every time I check twice because you never really know who's watching. When I was 18 back in 2010, I worked at a small pizza shop in the quiet town of Maplewood. The place wasn't much to look at, but the pay was decent, and I made extra cash from tips, especially during deliveries. One particular night, however, left me with an experience I'll never forget. It was a chilly autumn evening, and my shift started like any other. I clocked in at 5 p.m., ready to work until midnight. The first few hours were routine, taking orders, preparing pizzas, and making deliveries. Around 9:30 p.m., an order came in for a delivery to a house on the outskirts of town, about a 20-minute drive from the shop. The address was unfamiliar, but I didn't think much of it. I grabbed the pizza, hopped into my car, and set off. As I drove further from the familiar streets of Maplewood, the surroundings became increasingly desolate. The streetlights were sparse, and towering trees lined the narrow, winding road, casting eerie shadows under the moonlight. The GPS led me down a secluded lane that I had never noticed before. The houses were few and far between, hidden behind dense foliage and long, unkempt driveways. After what felt like an eternity, I arrived at the address. The house was an old Victorian-style mansion, its once grand facade now faded and worn. Ivy crawled up the walls, and the front yard was overgrown with weeds. The place exuded an unsettling aura, but I brushed off my unease, attributing it to the isolation and the late hour. I parked my car at the end of the long driveway and approached the house. The porch light was dim, flickering occasionally, barely, illuminating the front door, which stood slightly ajar. This was unusual. Most customers kept their doors closed, especially at night. Hesitant, I knocked gently and called out, "Hello, pizza delivery." A man's voice responded from within. "Come on in, I'm in the kitchen setting up. Just bring it in here, please." His tone was friendly, but something about the situation felt off. Entering customers' homes wasn't standard practice, but it wasn't unheard of, especially if they were elderly or had mobility issues. I stepped inside cautiously, the door creaking as it swung open wider. The interior was dimly lit, with only a few candles casting dancing shadows on the peeling wallpaper. The air was thick with a musty scent, and the wooden floorboards groaned under my weight. I made my way down a narrow hallway toward what I assumed was the kitchen. As I entered the room, I noticed the table was set for one, but no one was there. "Sir?" I called out, my voice echoing slightly. "Over here in the living room," the voice replied, now sounding deeper and more insistent. I turned toward the adjacent room, its entrance shrouded in darkness. The only light came from the faint glow of the kitchen candles, barely penetrating the gloom. My instincts screamed at me to leave, but curiosity and a sense of duty propelled me forward. As I stepped into the living room, the temperature seemed to drop. The room was sparsely furnished with a single armchair facing an old dusty television. The walls were adorned with faded family portraits, their subjects' eyes seeming to follow me. A grandfather clock in the corner ticked loudly, the only sound breaking the oppressive silence. Suddenly, the front door slammed shut, the sound reverberating through the house. My heart raced as I spun around, only to find the room empty. Panic set in and I hurried back toward the front door, only to find it locked. Fumbling with the knob, I felt a cold breath on the back of my neck. "Stay a while," the voice whispered, now directly behind me. I turned sharply, but there was no one there. The hallway stretched before me, darker than before. Shadows seemed to move along the walls, and the once faint, musty smell had intensified, making it hard to breathe. Desperate, I remembered my phone in my pocket. I pulled it out, but the screen was black, dead, despite being fully charged before. The delivery. A chill ran down my spine as I realized I was truly alone, trapped in this eerie house with no means of communication. Gathering my courage, I decided to find another way out. I moved cautiously through the house, avoiding the darkened living room and heading toward what I hoped was the back door. As I passed the staircase leading to the second floor, I heard faint footsteps above me, followed by a soft, childlike giggle. I froze, my breath hitching. The giggle echoed again, this time closer. I didn't wait to find out who or what it was. I bolted toward the back of the house, stumbling into what appeared to be a study. The room was cluttered with old books and papers, and a large antique desk sat in the center. A single window offered a glimpse of the outside, but it was nailed shut. Frantic, I searched for something to pry the window open. My eyes landed on a rusty letter opener on the desk. Grabbing it, I wedged it between the window and the frame, applying as much force as I could muster. The wood creaked and splintered, but the window remained steadfastly shut. Behind me, the door to the study creaked open. I didn't dare turn around. With a final desperate effort, I slammed my fist against the glass, shattering it. Ignoring the pain and the blood now dripping from my hand, I cleared the remaining shards and hoisted myself through the opening, landing roughly on the damp grass outside. I didn't look back. I sprinted toward my car, parked at the end of the driveway. As I reached it, I fumbled with the keys, my hands trembling. Finally, I managed to unlock the door and slide into the driver's seat, locking the doors behind me. Starting the engine, I cast one last glance toward the house. In the upstairs window, a shadowy figure stood watching me, its features obscured by darkness. The figure raised a hand and waved slowly. I didn't wait to see more. I slammed the car into reverse, sped down the driveway, and didn't stop until I was back at the pizza shop. I burst into the store, breathless and shaken. My manager looked up, startled. "What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." I tried to explain, but the words caught in my throat. How could I describe what had just happened? Who would believe me? That night, I quit my job at the pizza shop. I couldn't bring myself to make another delivery, especially not to that part of town. Years have passed since that eerie encounter, but the memories remain vivid. I still wonder about that house, the voice, and the shadowy figure in the window. Some things, it seems, are better left unexplored. Back in 2017, I was 24 years old and working as a night security guard in a small town called Maplewood, which is just one of those quiet places where nothing much usually happens. I had just broken up with my girlfriend a few weeks before and needed a job that kept my mind off things. That's when I found a listing for a security position at a local tech office. The company was called Blue Signal Systems, but to be honest, I never really figured out what they did there. Something about data storage or cloud stuff. I didn't care much. My job wasn't to understand that. I was just there to watch the place during the night and make sure nothing weird happened. At first glance, the building didn't look like it needed security at all. It was a single-floor office with just 3 rooms, a hallway, and a break room with an old vending machine that mostly sold stale chips. It was so quiet that most nights I just sat in the little security room doing nothing. The only cameras were on the outside, and they were so fuzzy you could barely tell if something moved unless it walked right up to the lens. But hey, it was easy money and I was happy to just sit there and pass the hours watching YouTube on my phone. I started each night around 9 p.m. I'd walk in, flip on the alarm system, and settle into the security room with a bag of snacks. I was the only one in the building at night, which was sometimes relaxing and sometimes not. You don't realize how loud buildings can be until you're sitting in one completely alone. Pipes groan, the fridge hums, and every little creak sounds like footsteps. One night in October, around 1 in the morning, I was halfway through a video when I heard a noise that made me sit up straight. It was a clicking sound, sharp and sudden, like a door latch snapping shut. I paused the video and listened. Everything went silent again. I stood up, opened the security room door, and looked down the hallway. The 3 office doors were all shut, just like I had left them. Still, something didn't feel right. I walked down the hallway, opening each door one at a time. The rooms all looked normal. Rows of desks, chairs pushed in, computers off. I even checked under a few desks just to be sure. Nothing. I tried to shake it off. Maybe I'd imagined it, or maybe it was just something settling in the building. That kind of thing happens, right? I went back to the security room, but this time I left the door open. If I heard anything else, I wanted to hear it clearly. I rewound the camera footage just to be safe, but as usual, the outdoor cameras showed nothing. No movement, no lights, not even a raccoon or a car passing by. About 20 minutes later, I was just starting to relax again when I heard another sound, soft this time, but definitely real. It was the creak of a door opening, very slowly, like someone was trying not to be heard. I froze. I stepped out into the hallway and immediately noticed that the last door on the left, an office I had just checked, was now cracked open. My heart started pounding. I hadn't heard the alarm go off and there was no sign on the cameras of anyone entering the building. So how was that door open? I moved toward it slowly, every step feeling heavier than the last. The door creaked as I pushed it open wider. The room was dark, but I could still make out the outlines of the desks and chairs. I stepped inside and began walking carefully past each row, trying not to make any noise. Then I saw it. Something small moved near the back wall. It was barely anything, like a flicker of a shadow, but I stopped dead in my tracks. I turned my head, and that's when I saw him. There was a man crouched under one of the desks. His skin looked pale and he had dark, sunken eyes like he hadn't slept in weeks. His black hair hung over his face and he stared at me with this strange mix of anger and fear. He looked like he didn't want to be seen, but also like he might do something if I didn't leave right away. As soon as we locked eyes, he started to move. I didn't stick around to see what he had in mind. I spun around and bolted out of the room, running down the hallway as fast as I could. I burst through the front doors, which finally triggered the alarm. The loud beeping echoed behind me as I kept running until I reached the far end of the parking lot. I turned around and tried to catch my breath while watching the front entrance. Seconds later, the man ran out of the building. He didn't even look around, just sprinted around the side and vanished into the trees behind the lot. I kept my eyes on the shadows, half expecting him to come back, but he didn't. The police arrived within minutes. I showed them the footage, but when we checked it, there was nothing. No sign of the guy. He hadn't entered through any door, and the cameras never showed him leaving either. It was like he had just appeared inside the building out of thin air. The next day, I asked the company if they knew who he was. They said no and claimed nothing was missing. They seemed a little too calm about it, honestly. When I brought up how strange it was to have a security guard for such a small office, The manager just shrugged and said it was a precaution, but I could tell they were hiding something. Over time, I started wondering if that man had once worked there. Maybe he got fired and never got over it. Maybe he'd been sneaking in for a while, staying quiet, hiding in the walls or something. I know that sounds crazy, but the building had a lot of odd little vents and back rooms that didn't show up on the cameras. Who knows how long he could have been hiding? I stayed in that job for a few more months, but I never felt comfortable after that. Every little sound made me jump. I kept thinking I'd see that pale face again, just waiting in the dark. Eventually, I found a better job in a brighter, busier place, and I got out of Maplewood for good. I never learned who that man was, or how he got in. Part of me hopes I never do. But sometimes, late at night, I still think about those eyes under the desk, watching, waiting. And that's what scares me the most. What if he's still out there, hiding in some other quiet office, waiting for the next guard to find him?